Welcome back to another episode of Critical Hit, the podcast where we break down the bold ideas, shifts, and strategies shaping in the next generation of marketing. I'm your host, Behtash Moojedi, and today we're diving deep into the topic that's got everyone talking, debating, and frankly, rethinking everything they know about marketing. That is essentially, how is AI reshaping agency world and what it really takes to stay relevant when discovery happens through AI, not just search. A few years ago, today's guest was told something that would have crushed most founders. AI is coming for your agency. But instead, he didn't fold, he doubled down, he leaned in, and he found a way to weave technology and authenticity together, proving that trust and creativity are still the strongest differentiators, even in AI-first world. Joining me today is Wes Towers. Wes Towers, the founder and creative director of Uplift 360, a digital agency based in Australia that's redefining what it means to build and scale an online presence, especially for industries like construction, manufacturing, and trades. As for Wes himself, is a designer, author, and creative strategist who's been helping brands evolve for more than 2 decades. He's worked with hundreds of businesses, guiding them through rebranding, automation, and now the new frontier of AI integration. In today's episode, we'll unpack how Wes turned an existential threat into a growth opportunity, what discovery through AI really means for brands, and how marketers can build trust in a world where algorithms, not audiences, are often the first to decide what gets seen. So grab your coffee, open your notes, and let's hit play on one of the most relevant conversations happening in the marketing today. Wes, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Behtash. Fantastic to be with you today, and happy to go through some of the lessons I've learned the hard way in some instances. So ready for a good chat.
That's fantastic. Wes, I want to start from the moment that you mentioned somebody coming to you and say AI is coming for your agency. That for a lot of founders, that statement is very hard to hear, but it doesn't seem like you backed down. You took that as a opportunity to refine services and reshape what marketing agency is all about. So tell me what went through your head and, what made you ultimately lean into AI instead of running away from it?
Yeah, well, it was a really difficult time for me. So it was roughly 3 years ago now, and it was a business valuer who told me AI was coming for the business, and he gave a lot lower value on the business simply because there's a lot of vulnerability and risk. And people, when they're buying a business, they want to buy some level of certainty. They want to know that it's sustainable and things are going to be profitable for the long term. So the business has been great and successful and all of that. But it was, 3 years ago when AI was just starting to be people were realizing the potential for it to change industries, change career paths. Certainly as a digital agency, so we do websites, we do SEO, those sorts of things. Everyone realized they were probably the most vulnerable desk-based jobs, were the most vulnerable to AI. And so, it was a rude wake-up call really to, and we started, a few years ago, we started to see across the media people talking about the displacement of jobs and careers. And so this valuer agreed with that line of thinking. So it was a wake-up call, but it forced me to really think about AI and how I can keep our business relevant and how I can introduce it to streamline our business effectively. So we've done that and continue to do that because technology is evolving so fast. So to get the end product finished quicker, so the same results and the same goals that we were always trying to achieve, we've just streamlined our processes to make the most of the tools and technology, which makes sense. But I guess the wake-up call really frightened me into action. So it forced me to say, what are the opportunities here? How do I flip the script and find opportunity in my business to make it better than it was prior to AI? So we did that from a technical standpoint. But really it woke up an awareness in me of my own personal values and convictions more than anything else. So I realized I valued human connection and relationship and all of those touch points in business that you get to experience, particularly as a leader, where you get to meet lots of amazing people and have conversations and real world interaction. So that's what I really enjoyed. So with the changes, I didn't want to lose the human aspect of business. So I humanized as far as far as I could. I started to do SEO reports more so with video. So, I know you work in similar spaces, and so typically we'll send out, most companies like us would send a monthly report of the improvements, whatever they're working on, SEO, ads, whatever. And so, but I started to do a video review of the findings. So still same, show the charts and everything like that and the data, but it was just a video screen recording of me with my mouse and explaining in human terms what it might mean for the business and where the opportunities might be and what we could tinker with next. Those sorts of things. So anything I could do to humanize the business, because they
Mm-hmm.
were important values for me, it really did help. And so we met. So despite the business valuers suggesting a business was vulnerable and, it could be wiped out, the whole industry could
Absolutely.
be wiped out, effectively, he was saying, my business flourished and we had the best financial year ever, just the last reporting season. So um, it's been a wild ride, but frightening and exciting at the same time. I'm sure you've experienced some of the same things.
Absolutely. That's a very nice touch on the video because I found that useful, especially when I used to pitch UI designs to the clients, SEO reports, a lot of that. It's a different thing when you vocalize it, when you put it, to your point, humanize it and communicate, even if it's not a one-on-one and you're creating that video experience for them, it makes a lot of difference. And when it comes to AI, it's scary at times, but it's so much opportunity there. It's so much excitement around AI. I don't know whether you tried it or not. There was a what was that application called? It was a project management tool. I forgot the name. I'm going to hate myself when it comes back to me. It essentially started block timing using AI. I used to spend hours and hours trying to create the backlog and adding and subtracting and meetings in the middle. It just streamlined that whole thing for me. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much opportunities there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the opportunities sometimes feel frightening because as people, we don't like change, particularly if we're super busy, but the changes that we can introduce actually save us time. So it's sometimes a small time investment to learn but the payoff is so much greater. But we're living in really crazy times with AI. And so, I mean, I watch a lot of YouTubes and some of it gets pretty wild with some of the predictions, and some of the predictions are coming from authorities in the space of what it
Hmm.
all means. But, businesses are going to be transformed. I think everybody is aware of that. It's already happening. But I think the time for authenticity has arrived. Already we're seeing that there's a lack of trust with material. And so people realize you can just create generic content really fast and it sounds fun and it sounds promising, but it's just the average sum total of what everyone else is saying. So people are, quickly writing their websites content or their whatever other content they need for, socials or any other marketing collateral, but it's not authentically theirs. So people are kind of seeing through that. If they see it's not genuine or authentic, there's a lack of trust, and trust really is what people are buying on the back of trust. So it is interesting how we tackle those scenarios.
Yeah, and there was to add to yours is that M dash police on LinkedIn where, every time now the people are very sensitive about the M dashes and, the whole industry is just becoming, especially on the content creation, becoming an echo chamber of the same voice over and over and over again. So I can see how would you say authenticity is, what are the non-negotiables for you that you preserved when you pivoted towards AI?
Yeah, so I guess as long as the outcome being achieved was the same from a technical, so there's a technical aspect which can only improve with greater technology. So that's that piece, but the messaging is the piece that is vulnerable to being inauthentic. That's the part that we're really doubling down on with clients as well. And just to make sure we know precisely what they do, why they do it, what sets them apart. Points to understand in any business is what is distinctive about you. So if you've got personal processes or values or anything that's slightly different to the competitors, They're really the points of view that you need to make sure that's flourishing through your content, because everyone kind of knows. It depends on the industry, but everyone will know the basic foundations of an industry because all your competitors are talking about that. But what you really need to make sure you communicate to your end potential clients is those unique points. So the message, but also the voice in which you communicate. So the style guide and getting these things right. Because we're writing content on behalf of clients, it's draft format. They always need to make sure they go through it and make sure they can massage in any specifics that can only they can bring. And those are the things, those content gains, something that's additional that hasn't been said before is where the value is. Otherwise, it's just kind of generic and bland, and there's no purpose for Google to surface it or AI. So everyone's trying to show up in the large language models as well. And I mean, it's not as complicated as what people might think. It's about all the platforms, no matter what they are trying to surface the very best information for the person using the tool in which they're using. So you need to have that content published somewhere. And one of the key, for our belief, is one of the key foundations for that is your website, because you control that space, and there's less noise and confusion. So you can have a greater message there, but all the tools are pulling the information from far and wide online. So publish it in your website as a priority, but also have the message adapted. So whatever your core messages are adapted, but for social media, and you'll have different angles as well, because businesses are complex, and provide lots of solutions for various scenarios. So there's huge opportunity to touch on all those points.
And I'm sure when it comes to content creation, do you find it challenging in the niche? Because you are dealing with a lot of niche technical industries. Do you find that to be, I'm guessing it's going to be more personalized, and when it's niche, you're treating it a different way to really capture that essence of the voice. How do you go about explaining that experience?
Yeah, so mostly we work with construction businesses, trades, building materials, those sorts of companies. So we niched into that really closely, and it's really been a massive advantage, because all of a sudden we're starting to understand precisely what these businesses do from a greater overarching idea. But then, so we kind of grasp what the industry is, but then we need to really drill into the uniqueness of them, and to communicate. Often the marketing is founder. It's almost personal branding, because people like to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And so if they know the founder to some degree, they might not personally know him, but him or her, but they have a sense of understanding who they are and what their values are and that sort of thing. So the company brand is often based on the founder brand. So it's good to understand really well who the founder is, and what makes them tick. And that just happens through conversation oftentimes. So just to understand where they're coming from, and so they communicate clearly. It's the guy, normally it's founder led by a man who's sort of worked his way through. He might have started out as an apprentice and became fully skilled in the service he provides, and then becomes in a management type of role in a company, and eventually starts his own company. So he's very hands-on and practical, and he knows his stuff. He's a technician who really brings great insights, because he's got that foundation, but he's evolved into leadership and being a founder and those sorts of things. So the technical aspect of AI and so on can sometimes be not inside their comfort zone. So that's
Mm.
where our relationship building really has an important part to play, because they don't need to know all the tools and the techniques, because they're the founder. They don't need to do everything themselves, but they need to have a grasp of where things are headed and what the overriding principles that we're applying are. So it's a fun space to partner with these kind of companies, because they're fantastic at what they do, but they need that support from the digital aspect.
Absolutely. There is and I don't know whether that has been your experience, but I want to tap into your expertise on web design and website development in general. I would, in some spaces, there's certain, especially in the age of, Web 2.0 and social media, and there's just vast amount of channels available right now that some founders, some business owners, some the key decision makers might, start asking question of, in this age right now, do I even really need a website? or can I continue on without it and be successful?
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation people are having. So, and the part of it is because there's less reason to visit a website when you're researching a topic because you get the answer, even if you still use Google at times. Most of us do, but we get the answer there in Google itself. So there's less reason to click through to a website. But the thing to consider is that information that Google is pulling into the answer, it's being pulled from somewhere. And ideally, it's being pulled from your website, and therefore you're getting a brand mention. So when people are researching around a certain thing that you provide, then you realistically you want to be there. And the easiest way to have lots of content and reputation built is to have a website. If you haven't got a website, that's a signal that you're not really authority or a serious business. That's why Google have always considered the age of a website, for example, as a factor in which will help SEO, because it's just a basic judgment call that if a business has had a website a long time, they've been around a long time, and they've probably had some level of success, and they've got some level of authority. So all these authority signals work together. So I think the way we do it is we build a website with clear, concise, compelling messaging for the main sales type pages, so people can make an inquiry effectively, because that's the main call to action for most of our businesses. Request a quote sometimes. But behind that, we have the blog where they can fuel lots of information in there and touch on lots of different aspects, case studies, examples, stories that they're supporting clients with. Now, no one's going to read all of that information because that's a lot of information. But what the tools are doing, and they're very good at it already, is to surface the right information at the right time. So if someone's looking for something, doesn't matter if you're on ChatGPT having a conversation, if you've got a good piece of content that addresses the need in which someone's looking for, chances are they're pulling your information, and there's an opportunity to show up, whether that be Google, large language models. It'll all kind of work the same. And it's my view that this is going to get even more sophisticated. So the more specific content around lots and a broad range of ideas that you can bring into your digital world through your website and every other platform, the better it's going to be for the long term. Even if they don't show up on your website, it's a way in which you can effectively train the AI through your other means.
Absolutely. And when it comes to, smaller brands, potentially some of the startups, they might look at AI and might have some misunderstanding. A lot of fear might be based on budget for financial reasons, but just simply adaptation, amount of resources that they have to dedicate to it. What do you think is the best way for these smaller brands and startups to adapt in the AI-driven discovery world in the base of, their situation?
Yeah, well, as a startup, sometimes it might be a person who's worked in a particular industry for a while, and they've decided to go out on their own effectively. They've seen the boss makes all the money, and they want a bigger chunk of that, and they want a bit of control over their lives and to build something. But oftentimes when you're starting out like that, you realistically, you don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing and so on. I think the tools and techniques of AI are going to only enhance these businesses if they're prepared to roll up their sleeves and figure it out as best they can. I mean, there's lots of vibe coding on these days, more so for apps and so on, because the way you can do websites, vibe coded style of websites, but they're kind of all generic and bland, and they don't really cut it quite yet. But it's perceivable that one day you can create a pretty great website through AI, and maybe you don't need people like me from the technical standpoint as much as you once did when you're starting out and you just need a basic something. But it's the difference between getting expert advice with someone with years of experience who knows what works because they've done it hundreds of times before and they're doing it daily. The difference, it could be quite expensive getting a cheap website, because all the opportunities lost. People have got to start where they're at. If they've got no budget, start where you're at. As I said before, the age of a website really does help. So even if it's not your perfect website, it's better to have a site that's imperfect than to wait forever and think you'll do it in a few years' time. Just build what you can with the budget you've got for now, and look to expand upon it, because technology is going to change as well. So realistically, you'll be evolving the site. I would say to start where you're at. Obviously, if you've got budget to spend, it's better to get the experts in. That frees you up to focus on what you do best, the billable hours, if that's the type of business, and the things that only a founder can bring. So that's one of the biggest lessons for every business, is to not get lost in doing all the tasks yourself. Build a team, whether they be employees or outsourced service providers. Oftentimes, it's best to have a set of outsourced providers who are specialized and experts in the one or two things that they do. So then you're getting the best. But you need to build it in a team of trusted experts for the various things that I believe. But it is a challenge as small businesses start out with no budget, and they want to minimize the risks as well of not investing too much, not putting too much of a remortgaging their house, for example, and putting all their eggs in the business. Some people do, and it pays off and it pays dividends and they go fantastically well, but others need to just edge their way in as best they can.
Absolutely. That was a very empowering answer. Thank you, Wes. What advice would you give to other marketers that are feeling threatened these days by AI?
Yeah, well, certainly, because we're, lots of different marketing experts in different worlds. I suppose the ones that it seems clear to me that are feeling most threatened are the copywriters, because once upon a time, they're writing words and they understand language and writing compelling content, whether it be for sales pages or informational content, whatever it is. They have that skill set, but we're talking about large language models. That's precisely what the large language models are trying to achieve, is to write information, whether that, words for humans or for code, which is another language. So they're the ones that are at most risk. So it's about finding how you bring value to the world, outside of just the technical doing of the task, outside of just for us building the website. It's about the additional value that only we can provide, because we know the industry and we know what works. So copywriters kind of have to think about that too, that I can understand. They're the ones that, in my view, look as though they're struggling the most. You never really can tell, but I know a bunch of copywriters, and some of them have gone back to full-time work and doing other things as well. So I think just finding a way in which you can stand out. Maybe it's about niching, so you really understand precisely the content. I mean, lawyers, for example, if you could really understand law and maybe an aspect of law, family law, for example, then you really understand, because you can't publish incorrect information in those spaces. It's incredibly difficult. Problematic if you're publishing something that's not quite right. You've just left it to ChatGPT. So finding a way you can bring value to the world is the real thing. And it's always been the case, but it's just amplified, exaggerated everything. Everything's just amplified with AI, I think.
Yeah, amplification is, I think, a nice word for it. Whereas, if you have a good strategy, it amplifies it. If you have a bad strategy, it amplifies it. So it really, I think, one of the things that might make a differentiator for everybody in this industry or any industry is going to be how much of maybe an outside thinker you are, and you can really make a difference in a way that other people can't.
Yeah, that's so true. I think the artists are the ones that are going to have a resurgence of value, because they're creative thinkers. I mean, it's kind of like art is always a thing where you valued a piece of art based on who the artist was, and you wanted to know that the artist picked up the brush if it's a painting, and it was his or her brush that touched the canvas and made the picture. I mean, it's not, someone could create a fake of a famous artist, but it had no value because people realized it was fake. And it doesn't matter necessarily of the quality of the painting, but the whole story of the authenticity and the human connection and the artist himself and the backstory. I think there's going to be value in all of these things, the humanization, the creative, the artist. And if we can position ourselves in that way to be perceived as the artist in our industry, or the creator or the leader in some way, there's going to be huge value in that.
Absolutely. All right, some personal questions. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's one experience in your journey so far that you think shaped how you see the marketing industry today?
Yeah, well, I suppose Originally, I was like most of us. I started out sort of freelance, I guess, more of than a fully fledged business, which is fine. But it's when I was starting out, I just took on anything and everything for clients, and I kind of knew the principle of niching. But I took on a job at one point which nearly killed me, to be honest. It was outside the skill set in which I had. We certainly got it done. I was reliant on a lead developer to build a certain website, which was quite complex. It was a dating website a number of years ago. And so he ended up quitting. He did the whole proposal because I didn't understand the tech. He did the proposal, the timing and estimates, everything like that. We submitted it, won the job, and then he quit a couple of weeks into the job. It was a massive job. So,
Oh man.
yeah, so it was a nightmare, nearly killed me, but it was a massive lesson to not deviate too far outside of what we do best. So, lesson learned the hard way in that instance. We got the job done, and I mean, I spent a lot of midnight hours getting it done myself because the lead developer disappeared and no one else knew how to do it. So, got it done. The client was happy and everything, but they had no idea of the heartache it caused me in the process.
I feel like that's always a risk with the with the contracts. I had similar experience, and that's why every time I'm like, this is my plan A, this is my plan B, plan C, and in case plan Z, in case something bad happens.
Yeah.
What inspires you to, work? What gets you excited in the morning?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing and it changes all the time. So right now it's, I think I said exciting and terrifying, and it really is at this moment in time, an exciting time to be alive for a number of reasons. But it's also terrifying. And I think for my kids, I'm starting to think about that even more. My eldest son is starting to work with me now 1 day a week. He's been doing social media marketing for some influencers here in Melbourne who are really known people. I mean, he's kind of an artist. He's actually going to art school at the uni next year. It's sort of getting me excited to be able to help train him in some ways from a business standpoint, because he's doing wonderful work for the influencers and he's building his own little following. But the some of the business things that I learned the hard way, I'm trying to help him with while he's here with me 1 day a week. So it's a big opportunity. It's getting me excited again to see things are fresh for his benefit. So eventually one day he can build a phenomenal business as well as he's starting out right now.
That must be a very fruitful and great experience. I'm happy that you're able to experience that. And my last question, if you weren't in this field and there was an alternate universe, what would you think your other version would be doing right?
Yeah, if I was in a completely different path, I would probably like to be a real estate agent. And it's a completely different aspect of, like, it's totally different to what I do now, but they get to sell people their dreams, and they get to experience the idea of taking people through a new home and that excitement, and to find properties for people to build their lives together, and they're imagining what their lives might be in this new home. I would really love to do that because I like people to experience and help people and serve people in that manner. Websites no longer became a thing and my industry did really fold. I would probably look to go into that career path.
Well, let me know where you're getting your certificate because I'll be right behind you.
Yeah.
All right, Wes, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you for taking the time to share your story and your perspective. Before we wrap up, I'd love to give you a couple minutes to speak directly to our listeners. Where can people connect with you, learn more about your work, or maybe explore what you're building at Uplift 360? I pass on the microphone to you.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much again for the opportunity to talk today. And hopefully the audience has got some value that they can introduce into their own business. I think that's the key, isn't it? To find even just one or two key points that you can start to think about introducing into your own business and how you adapt in the modern day. But if anyone does want to connect, the easiest way is to find me is uplift360.com.au. That's our business website. There's also opportunity, or there's the social media, all the social media accounts are there, even my personal LinkedIn, which I'll connect with anyone there. But you can also book strategy calls on the website itself. They're actually with me as well. So they can be booked in straight into my calendar and we can have a conversation. And there's no obligations with that. We can just chat. Maybe we chat about some of the things that have been covered on this call today and see how that applies to your business and your circumstances. I'm a human person. I like to connect with people, so I'm happy to give value there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Be sure to follow Wes's work. I will leave the links in the description on how you can connect with Wes as well. What I loved about today's conversation is that it reminds us of something that is potentially timeless, that no matter how much the technology goes far, the human element doesn't go away and AI just amplifies it. It's not a human versus machine. It's machine and humans working together. And the people who win the next era are the ones that are successfully leaping through the next stage. People like Wes that is strategically thinking about this, will learn to collaborate with it and while keeping authenticity in the center. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the Critical Hit podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're tuning in from. And as always, you can find more insights, resources, and weekly commentary on marketing strategy, AI leadership, and so on. Until next time, stay curious, stay strategic, and remember, the hit comes when you connect clarity with action.